Heh, what you have is already old news. The latest news is that Diva Warden of the Sky Prison Valley died at the hands of that new abnormal genius, Diva Yenyun. What? Yenyun became a supreme diva so quickly? He even killed Diva Warden. That's right. This is absolutely true. The news has already spread. The Yen clan continent was also known as the progenitor continent, or the Yen ancestor continent. It represented a huge continent presided over by progenitor Yen. Recently, who had the greatest reputation on the Yen clan continent? Without a doubt, it must be Diva Yenyun. Many people had never seen Diva Yenyun, but the name Yenyun was constantly mentioned, as if he was making a lot of movements at all times. For example, from the beginning, Yenyun had been in the mother's womb for hundreds of years, and was a peak title diva at birth. This was already a strange occurrence, but if that was all, it would just remain a strange occurrence. However, as soon as Yenyun was born, he killed the notorious 9 revolutions ravaging diva. Could be said that he made his fame in a single battle. After that, Yenyun became even more out of control. He went to the Sky Prison Valley and killed the famous Diva Warden. That was a supreme diva. Originally, they were only a little interested in Yenyun, and those supreme divas did not pay much attention to him. However, after killing Diva Warden, they heard a lot of news about Yenyun along the way. For example, he had defeated Diva Mountain Range, who was also a supreme diva. He had also killed Diva Giant Crane, who was also a supreme diva. Seemed like every day, Yenyun was becoming stronger. It seemed like every day, news of Yenyun defeating the other supreme divas would arrive. Some observant people carefully studied Yenyun's progress, and realized that he was advancing all the way towards the ancestral land of the Yen clan. He was clearly establishing his influence. Moreover, he was coming to the ancestral land of the Yen clan with the momentum of his grand victories. In the ancestral land of the Yen clan, an old man opened his eyes and muttered softly, "Impressive. The ancestral land of the Yen clan is going to be in turmoil again. I hope he won't disappoint the progenitor this time." In the Wild Wind City, Lin Feng looked quietly at a city below. He was not interested in entering. Lin Feng had only sensed one supreme diva in this city, and it was a relatively weak supreme diva. Lin Feng did not have time to challenge them anymore. During this period of time, Lin Feng had defeated many divas along the way. He believed that his fame had long spread throughout the entire Yen clan continent, and even caused an uproar. During this period of time, Lin Feng could sense that there seemed to be a faint increase in providence on him. Providence was invisible and untouchable. However, as a dignified Kiliacosm sovereign, Lin Feng had a small Kiliacosm in his body. How could he not sense providence? To possess the so-called providence, one had to become famous in the entire small Kiliacosm. The more famous one was, the greater the providence. That was why Lin Feng needed to establish his influence. Now, it seemed like his choice was correct. This was because as his influence grew stronger and stronger, traces of providence began to surround Lin Feng. With providence, Lin Feng seemed to be able to sense the Kiliacosm core space slightly. Although he was not too sure about the exact location of the Kiliacosm core space, Lin Feng had indeed sensed the Kiliacosm core space. This small Kiliacosm did have a Kiliacosm core space. However, Lin Feng had already traveled all over the Yen clan continent. He did not just go to the Yen clan's ancestral land, but investigated all the corners in search of the Kiliacosm core space, only to find nothing. To be precise, it was not that he had gained nothing, because even by elimination, Lin Feng knew that there was a high chance that the Kiliacosm core space was in the ancestral land of the Yen clan, or on the other 3 progenitor continents. No matter what, Lin Feng had to personally go to the ancestral land of the Yen clan to take a look, and even meet that progenitor, Yen. Lin Feng vaguely sensed that the 4 progenitors were very special. In particular, their relationship with this small Kiliacosm was very unusual. Perhaps they had some information on the Kiliacosm core space. That's about enough influence. There are probably many people in the ancestral land of the Yen clan who want to teach me a lesson. It would be best if they could attack. A smile appeared on Lin Feng's lips. He had defeated the supreme divas in succession, but he had never gone to the Yen clan's ancestral land. What was he doing? How could the people in the Yen clan's ancestral land not know? It was rumored that Lin Feng had the bloodline of the Yen clan and was a descendant of the progenitor's bloodline. However, no one had actually seen it before. Lin Feng was approaching the ancestral land of the Yen clan step by step with the momentum of great victories. Those divas in the ancestral land of the Yen clan must also realize some of Lin Feng's intentions. However, this was Lin Feng's goal. He wanted to make the people in the Yen clan's ancestral land displeased. Some people would even come to challenge him. It would be best if he could cause some commotion in the Yen clan's ancestral land. Not only could it increase his providence, it could even alert that mysterious progenitor Yen. This was Lin Feng's goal. Of course, the prerequisite was that Lin Feng could defeat the other party. When he arrived at the Yen clan's ancestral land, everyone had the bloodline of the Yen clan and the fire of Genesis. Lin Feng did not have much of an advantage. However, after traveling for so long, Lin Feng was not just challenging people everywhere without cultivating. On the contrary, Lin Feng was cultivating at every moment. Even after metamorphosing into a supreme diva, Lin Feng had never put aside his cultivation. Moreover, he was still accelerating. In such a short period of time, in reality, by relying on the energy of those defeated supreme divas, Lin Feng had already accelerated time by tens of millions of years. Bloodline cultivation relied on accumulation over time. 10 million years of time acceleration with abundant energy also allowed Lin Feng's bloodline to be successfully strengthened to the extreme. He was already at the peak of a supreme demon, or rather, the extreme. The next step was the progenitor. However, this step was also a natural chasm. Lin Feng also felt the shackles that seemed impossible to break through. He had never heard of any diva having the chance to break through and become a progenitor. None of the 4 progenitors became such through cultivation. They were all born naturally. In this world, there was a limit to cultivation, and that was a peak supreme diva. As for advancing further, at least not even Lin Feng could do it now. After all, the bloodline cultivation system was very different from the controller's system. The difference was too great. However, Lin Feng had a vague feeling that if he could never break through the shackles, he would never be able to become the chosen one of the world or the epic, and would never be favored by the providence of the small kiliocosm. The entire small kiliocosm seemed to be expecting the birth of a progenitor. Or rather, it was looking forward to the birth of a 5th progenitor, someone who became a progenitor through cultivation after birth. Once the 5th progenitor was really born, the 5th progenitor would definitely gather the providence of the entire small kiliocosm, and be far stronger than the previous 4 progenitors. Perhaps at that time, he would be able to sense the kiliocosm core space and even enter it. I've arrived at the ancestral land of the Yen clan. Suddenly, Lin Feng stopped and looked calmly at a huge city in front of him. Quick! Quick! Shui! There's something interesting to watch. Brother Ling, what's the excitement? You don't know? Another bloodline descendant of the Yen clan from the outside world entered the ancestral land again today. Moreover, this time that diva is really something. He's actually using a challenge to display his prowess in the ancestral land, defeating many divas in the ancestral land. What? Someone actually requested to return to the ancestral land by issuing a challenge. That's right, that's right. Let's hurry up and take a look. If we're late, we won't be able to see it. Many direct descendants of the Yen clan lived in the ancestral land of the Yen clan. Most of them were titled divas. Even some ordinary divas who had only been born for a short time had extremely strong potential. As for the supreme divas, there were even more of them. There were even peak supreme divas, who were invincible among supreme divas. At this moment, in the martial arts arena of the Yen clan's ancestral land, many divas were sitting around. All of them were the supreme divas, and only the supreme divas were qualified to sit. As for the others standing, they were all at least titled divas. However, at this moment, the expressions of these supreme divas were all very dark. The third one, a light voice echoed in the air above the martial arts arena. Lin Feng stood calmly in the martial arts arena with a calm expression. Just now, he had already defeated the 3rd diva from the ancestral land of the Yen clan, and all of them were supreme divas. Lin Feng had already understood before coming that there were only 3 methods to enter the Yen clan's ancestral land. The first was to obtain the approval of progenitor Yen. Then, one could directly become a diva in the ancestral land of the Yen clan and become an official descendant of the progenitor. Even if one did not have the progenitor's bloodline, it was nothing. No one would disobey the authority of the progenitor. The second method was to obtain the recommendation of some supreme divas, then have their identity thoroughly investigated. Then they would display their aptitude. If their aptitude was recognized and attracted the sympathy or appreciation of certain upper echelons in the Yen clan's ancestral land, they could also be included in the clan and become official descendants of the Yen clan. The third method was the most direct and independent of others, and that was to issue a challenge directly. As long as one could challenge the supreme divas arranged by the ancestral land of the Yen clan, they could become an official member of the Yen clan directly, without having to obtain approval from others. However, this method was actually just a declaration to the outside world by the ancestral land of the Yen clan. Who could be stronger than the strongest experts of the Yen clan? Back when Lin Feng was just born, he was already a titled diva, and even had the strength of a peak titled diva. However, at that time he only had aptitude, and was still a little fellow. But now, who would have thought that as soon as Lin Feng arrived at the Yen clan's ancestral land, he would actually choose the third and least likely method, and challenge them directly. Moreover, from the first supreme diva to the current third, they were all defeated time and time again. It would be strange if the supreme divas in the Yen clan's ancestral land wore pleasant expressions. Weak to weak. Aren't the strongest experts of Yen Flame clan's ancestral land the strongest on the progenitor continent? Lin Feng shook his head, as if he had not had enough. It made the veins of many of the supreme divas in the Yen clan's ancestral land bulge. They could not help but want to go down and compete with him. However, the divas that still maintained their rationality did not have the slightest impulse. Lin Feng had defeated 3 supreme divas in a row. What did this mean? The first of the 3 divas could go unmentioned. He was only an ordinary supreme diva. However, the second and third divas were already very powerful among the supreme divas. Defeating them was enough to prove that Lin Feng already had the strength of a peak supreme diva. Perhaps he was only one step away from becoming invincible among supreme divas. There was only one person invincible among supreme divas in the entire ancestral land of the Yen clan. Normally, without life or death situations or especially important matters, who would dare to disturb that invincible entity? Hence, even though Lin Feng looked provocative, no one went down to fight Lin Feng anymore. All right, Diva Yen Yun. You have already passed the challenge and officially become a clan member of the Yen clan's ancestral land. Well, in view of your strength, you can also become an elder of the Yen clan's ancestral land. You will be assigned a mountain alone, and 10 titled divas plus 100 ordinary divas will be assigned under your command. The old man in the lead was a peak supreme diva. Lin Feng was eager to challenge him, but the other party had no intention of fighting at all. Instead, he gave Lin Feng the corresponding status directly. An elder of the Yen clan. This was not an idle position. On the contrary, elders of the Yen clan were reputed and had a high status, even in the entire progenitor continent. In the ancestral land of the Yen clan, they were even more powerful. In name, they were only second to progenitor Yen and the invincible Grand Elder, who was invincible among supreme divas. He was on equal footing with the other elders, and could enjoy all the privileges in the clan. However, Lin Feng was still dissatisfied. It was not because he felt that no one was fighting him, but because he felt that his providence did not seem to have increased by much. After he made a scene in the ancestral land of the Yen clan, and even challenged many of the supreme divas in a high-profile manner, his providence had not increased by much. Even after becoming an elder of the Yen clan, his providence still had not increased by much. This seemed a little different from what he had imagined. Do I really have to become the 5th progenitor to become the chosen one of the epic, or the chosen one of the world? Lin Feng frowned. Next, Lin Feng became an elder of the Yen clan. Although he was disliked by the other elders of the Yen clan, he was a genuine elder of the Yen clan, and had all the corresponding privileges. For example, Lin Feng had the right to view any archive texts with any secrets in the ancestral land of the Yen clan. Lin Feng spent some time browsing through all the books in the Yen clan. However, none of the books mentioned how to become a progenitor. The 4 progenitors mentioned were all innate. He could cultivate his bloodline. There was actually still room for improvement in the bloodline in Lin Feng's body. However, no matter how much he improved, Lin Feng knew that his bloodline could not metamorphose into the bloodline of a progenitor. This seemed to involve the essence of this small kiliacosm. Even with Lin Feng's realm as an esteemed kiliacosm sovereign, it was very difficult and almost impossible for him to use his bloodline as the foundation to become a progenitor. That was, unless Lin Feng was willing to spend innumerable years slowly deducing and studying it just like Diva Warden. Then, there might be a chance of developing a method to slowly become the 5th progenitor and transform it into a new progenitor's bloodline. However, that required time, and it was a very long time. Lin Feng did not want to waste too much time in a small kiliacosm. If that happened, the gains would not make up for the losses. Perhaps I can use Providence as an entry point. As long as I have great Providence, anything is possible. Once I find a way to enter the kiliacosm core space, I can use the power of the kiliacosm sovereign and even interfere with the true form. One after another idea flashed through Lin Feng's mind. He had never forgotten his goal in descending into this small kiliacosm. To enter the kiliacosm core space and seize a complete portion of small kiliacosm origin. Apart from that, nothing else was important. Providence. Lin Feng was the kiliacosm sovereign. He began to deduce the providence of this small kiliacosm. In reality, although providence was illusory, it was still a form of energy to the kiliacosm sovereign. As long as he could sense it, he could deduce it. Moreover, Lin Feng had a large amount of providence, so deduction was even easier. Based on his own providence, Lin Feng began to spend time slowly deducing the flow of providence in the entire small kiliacosm, or rather, the exact location of the providence of the small kiliacosm. After 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, swoosh, it took Lin Feng a total of 3 years to deduce the general direction. However, his gaze was a little strange. It's right in the ancestral land of the Yen clan? Lin Feng deduced that the flow of providence in the entire small kiliacosm was actually in the ancestral land of the Yen clan. It was naturally not in Lin Feng, but it was in the ancestral land of the Yen clan. As for the exact location, Lin Feng could not deduce it either. Those with great providence are all somewhat special. Focus on finding these special individuals. Lin Feng left his mountain directly. In the past few years, ever since Lin Feng became an elder of the Yen clan, he had actually been very quiet. He stayed in his mountain and did not do anything else, and seemed to be a completely different person from when he challenged the supreme divas of the Yen clan's ancestral land in a high-profile manner previously. Now, Lin Feng had finally left the mountain and began to hang around. In reality, he was looking for some people with great providence. However, the ancestral land of the Yen clan was huge. It would take some time for him to go over all the places. Lin Feng was not in a hurry. He strolled around slowly. Bang! An ordinary child was being beaten black and blue. Yen Jun, do you admit defeat? A tall and strong boy clenched his fists and stood arrogantly in front of a thin little boy. No! Yen Jun bit his lip. This was a stubborn child. Heh! If you won't admit defeat, we'll keep beating you until you do. Do you understand? You're a bastard that no one dotes on or likes. Hit him. The tall and strong boy was arrogant. With a wave of his hand, the 4 or 5 boys behind him swarmed forward. However, being trampled on the ground and punched and kicked like this was undoubtedly a huge humiliation. Stop! What are you doing? Suddenly, a crisp female voice came from behind. When those boys saw the beautiful and tall girl, their expressions all changed. They said ingratiatingly, Yen Lan, this little bastard provoked us again just now. We're just teaching him a lesson. Don't worry, his skin is thick. He won't be injured. Humph, you insulted Yen Jun. How can he not be angry? Leave quickly or I won't hold back. Although the girl's appearance was pure and beautiful, The aura on her body was already close to that of a diva. Once she became a diva, her status in the ancestral land of the Yen clan would be different. These boys did not dare to be at odds with the girl. Hence, they all glared fiercely at Yen Jun on the ground. Humph, little bastard, consider yourself lucky. It's Yen Lan who's standing up for you again. However, you'd better not run into us next time. Every time you run into us, we'll beat you up. Let's go. These boys threw down harsh words and turned to leave. Yen Lan quickly walked forward and helped Yen Jun up. Then, she said with a pained expression, Brother Jun, how are you? Do you want me to tell father to allow you to begin cultivating? That way, you won't have to be bullied by them. However, Yen Jun shook his head, as if he was uninjured. He grinned and said, Lanner, I'm fine. Even your father can't help in this matter. My identity means that I'm destined to not fit into this place. But if you don't stay here, where else can you go? The world is huge. Where can I not go? Apart from the ancestral land, there are also powerful divas in the outside world. As long as I can become the disciple of a powerful diva, one day, I will return here again. Yen Jun was young, but had maturity and fortitude beyond his age. This little fellow is quite interesting. He's been bullied since he was young, but he's accompanied by a beauty. Moreover, he has a strong will and is ambitious. Why does this feel a little familiar? Lin Feng's gaze was a little strange. When he was in the chaos, he had also heard of some biographies and novels, as well as some deeds of legendary figures. Without exception, these people had suffered all kinds of hardships when they were young, grew up with the company of generous benefactors, and waited for opportunities to soar to the top. Actually, this was the result of possessing providence. Providence. How is the providence on this little fellow? Lin Feng was interested in Yen Jun now, so he began to deduce. With a detailed target, deduction would be much easier. With this deduction, Lin Feng was immediately shocked. The providence on this lad is simply rich to the extreme. There's even a trace of cataclysmic power accompanying him. What's the meaning of this? Could this lad be the key person to trigger the cataclysm in the future? A sharp glint flashed across Lin Feng's eyes. He was certain that Yen Jun was the key figure in the entire small kiliocosm. Although he was still very weak now, he had providence. As long as such a person did not die, his achievements would definitely be impressive. Moreover, there were faint traces of cataclysmic power entwining his body. This meant that Yen Jun would definitely trigger a cataclysm in the future. This was the true protagonist of providence. However, Lin Feng did not care about any of this. He had finally found someone with strong providence. Perhaps he could obtain the exact location of the kiliocosm core space from Yen Jun, and even use the providence on Yen Jun to eventually enter the kiliocosm core space. However, the current Yen Jun was still very, very weak. It was hard to say if he could even grow to a certain extent. After all, just having providence was far from enough. There were also many people with great providence who did not manage to grow in the end. For example, if Lin Feng wanted to kill Yen Jun now, no matter how strong Yen Jun's providence was, it would be useless even if it drew out the title divas and supreme divas. Yen Jun would definitely die. Providence was not omnipotent, but with Lin Feng's protection, things would be different. Perhaps the providence had arranged for Lin Feng to meet Yen Jun. This might also be the effect of Yen Jun's providence. Lanner, I'll go back first. Yen Jun still had a smile on his face, but his smile was very forced. As he gradually walked further and further away, until he could no longer see Yen Lan, the smile on Yen Jun's face gradually disappeared. He clenched his fists tightly. His expression was incomparably dark, and his eyes were filled with anger. He could not forget the humiliation those boys had brought him just now. However, he remembered all of this firmly in his heart. It was because he was not strong enough now. Do you want to become stronger? Do you want to be the true master of your own fate? Suddenly, a light and unfamiliar voice entered Yen Jun's ears. Who is it? Yen Jun's pupils constricted, as if he had been frightened. He looked behind him with a sharp gaze. However, there was nothing behind him. Answer me. Do you want to be the true master of your own fate? The unfamiliar voice continued to sound in Yen Jun's ears. Yen Jun's heart skipped a beat. He was a little afraid, but also a little excited. The master of his own fate? Yen Jun recalled his identity and his situation. How could he not want to be the master of his own fate? However, was that possible with his identity? The master of my own fate. Heh! Who can be the master of their own fate? Swoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Yen Jun's vision blurred. He suddenly found an unfamiliar man had appeared in front of him. The man looked very young, but the aura on him was boundless. It was even more terrifying than the aura on Yen Lan's father. He knew that he might have encountered an expert this time. I can allow you to be the master of your own fate, but you have to pay a price. Benefits come with a price. What do I need to pay? A promise. In the future, when you reach the top, don't forget your promise to me. You have to give me a promise. Whatever I ask you to do, you have to agree to it. This was a very demanding request. Yen Jun clenched his hands tightly. He really wanted to become stronger, even in his dreams. Unfortunately, with his special identity, it was impossible for him to become stronger in the Yen clan's ancestral land. In fact, even if he left the ancestral land of the Yen clan and went to the outside world, how much better would his circumstances be? He might just be quickly captured by some curious divas for research. The reason was very simple. There were 4 progenitors' bloodlines in his body. Even though he mainly had the Yen clan's bloodline, and the other 3 bloodlines were very faint, they could not conceal the fluctuations of the other 3 progenitors' bloodlines in his body. For progenitors' bloodlines were simply unheard of. This involved a series of grievances and entanglements, including Yen Jun's parents. Yen Jun's father, in particular, was originally a supreme diva, but violated the taboo and conceived Yen Jun with Yen Jun's mother. In the end, they were punished by the Yen clan's ancestral land and sealed for eternity. Although the Yen clan left Yen Jun behind, they did not care for him. They only wanted Yen Jun to grow up in the ancestral land and slowly grow old and die naturally. They would not impart Yen Jun cultivation techniques at all. Although this was not an order from the Elder Council on the surface, it was an unspoken rule. All of the Yen clan regarded Yen Jun as a disgrace. No Yen clansman would take the initiative to impart cultivation techniques to Yen Jun. All right, I promise you. No matter what you ask, I'll agree to it in the future. Good. Don't forget your promise. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not need to do anything as long as Yen Jun agreed. He was not afraid of Yen Jun regretting it in the future. Yen Jun was merely a life form of the small Kiliacosm, who was not even an ordinary diva. Even if he was the key to this world, so what if he became a progenitor? Lin Feng could still easily suppress him. No one could go back on their promise to a Kiliacosm sovereign. You dare to impart cultivation techniques to me? Why wouldn't I dare? Lin Feng asked instead. You don't know my identity? Forget it then. I'll cause you trouble. Hearing Lin Feng's answer, Yen Jun's expression was downcast as he persuaded Lin Feng against it. Interesting. Isn't your identity Yen Jun? You possess 4 types of progenitors' bloodlines, mainly the bloodline of the Yen clan. Your bloodlines seem to be mixed and all weak. However, in reality, it's because you haven't developed them enough. You're a true prodigy, the one with infinite potential. Since you don't want to implicate me, I can secretly impart cultivation techniques to you. No matter who asks you about it in the future, just don't expose me, and it'll be fine. Yen Jun's eyes lit up, and he said with certainty, Master, don't worry. I absolutely won't tell anyone. Yen Jun knelt respectfully on the ground, and bowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times to Lin Feng. With that, he became Lin Feng's disciple. Though he did not even know Lin Feng's identity, and he did not ask. Lin Feng did not pay much attention to it. Of course, he was not afraid of the so-called unspoken rules of the Elder Council. However, he would avoid as much trouble as possible. Moreover, if it was really exposed, he could also see Yen Jun's character. At the same time tomorrow morning, wait for me at the back peak of the mountain. Yes, master. Jun raised his head, only to realize that there was no one in front of him. However, the words of his master echoed in his ears. Jun clenched his fists tightly, incomparably excited. He knew that this was his only chance. Even a lot of my providence has been sucked away. If I teach Jun day after day, I'm afraid there won't be much providence left in me. This Jun is indeed worthy of being the protagonist of providence in this small kiliocosm. He's an actual black hole that devours everything. As soon as Lin Feng returned to his residence, he realized that his providence was draining silently. It gradually flowed from his body to Jun. At this rate, ordinary supreme divas would soon lose all their providence. Once one lost their providence, all kinds of unlucky things would happen. In the end, they would even die an unnatural death, becoming an important event to motivate Jun. However, Lin Feng did not care at all. He was looking forward to Jun's providence reaching its peak, so that he could finally complete his mission. At that time, whether Jun would bring him into the kiliocosm core space was the most important thing. Soon, Lin Feng muttered softly. The next day, Lin Feng began to impart cultivation techniques to Jun. Jun possessed 4 types of progenitors' bloodlines, and his aptitude seemed very low. In reality, it was indeed very low. The concentration of his bloodlines were diluted by the 4 types of progenitors' bloodlines. In this world that emphasized on the concentration of bloodlines, there was no knowing how many fortuitous encounters he would need to experience to grow rapidly. However, Lin Feng did not want Jun to experience those hardships himself. The so-called protagonist of providence was meaningless before Lin Feng. The way Lin Feng saw it, Jun only lacked one thing, and that was time. He lacked time, a great amount of time. Not a year or 2, but 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 years. Lin Feng did not have any special cultivation techniques. He just imparted the cultivation technique for Jun's bloodline according to the bloodline cultivation system in this world. However, he had one advantage, and that was the principle of space-time. He could accelerate time and make up for Jun's greatest weakness. If a year was not enough, he would give him 10 years. If 10 years were not enough, he would give him 100 years. If 100 years were not enough, he would give him 1,000 or 10,000 years. In any case, the lifespans of the divas in this world were all very, very long. Time could be accelerated for a very, very long time. Hence, Lin Feng used the acceleration of time to allow Jun to grow rapidly without Jun's realization. In just a few months, Jun was already infinitely close to becoming a diva. Lin Feng had the feeling that once Jun became a diva, something very interesting would happen to Jun. On this day, Jun encountered Yen Kuei and the others outside. Yen Kuei was the big fellow who had beaten him up back then. "Yo, isn't this Jun? You've been so mysterious recently. What exactly are you doing?" Yen Kuei blocked Jun's path. Jun glanced at Yen Kuei. In the past, he would have been very angry. However, cultivating with his master allowed him to sense his strength improve every day. That feeling was simply indescribably wonderful. Recently, he was even about to break through and become a diva. Moreover, it was not just one bloodline breakthrough, but a total of 4 progenitors' bloodlines. Once he broke through, relying on the 4 progenitors' bloodlines, he would probably immediately be comparable to a peak diva. This was his advantage. He had the advantage of possessing the 4 progenitors' bloodlines. At this moment, these advantages were all unleashed. Of course, Jun did not know how long he had been cultivating for at all. On the surface, he seemed to have only cultivated for a few months. However, in reality, under Lin Feng's acceleration of time, Jun had cultivated for more than 1,000 years. This speed could only be considered slow, and might even be considered very slow. It was only thanks to the Yen clan's bloodline that his speed was slightly faster. It only took him 100 years to reach the critical point of breaking through. However, even this speed was nothing. It had to be known that there were divas that were titled divas or even supreme divas from the moment they were born. However, as his cultivation level broke through, and Jun's strength gradually increased, the benefits of his 4 progenitors' bloodlines would manifest. Once he broke through, he would be almost unparalleled among those in the same realm. Moreover, when the four progenitors' bloodlines interacted, they could even unleash incredible power. He already possessed such powerful strength. Although he was not a diva yet, he was more than powerful enough to deal with Yan Kuei. Hence, Yan Jun did not even pay attention to Yan Kuei. Instead, he ignored him directly and prepared to continue cultivating at the back mountain. Yan Jun, stop right there. However, Yan Kuei was enraged. Since when did Yan Jun dare to ignore him? Thud. Yan Kuei threw a punch, preparing to teach Yan Jun a lesson. Although Yan Kuei's cultivation level was not much and his aptitude was not much, he had at least cultivated. Against a mere Yan Jun, he had succeeded time and time again. There would be no accidents at all. However, this time, Yan Kuei's hand was firmly grabbed by Yan Jun. Yan Jun stared coldly at Yan Kuei, a chilling glint appearing in his eyes. What are you trying to do? Yan Kuei was afraid. He shuddered and lost all his courage. He could not understand why just a glance from Yan Jun, who was usually a pushover, was so terrifying now. Don't provoke me, Yan Jun said indifferently, then let go. Although his strength had improved greatly, he was very rational. Now was not the time for him to show his prowess. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, it would be useless if those powerful divas in the Yan clan's ancestral land attacked. Hence, the current Yan Jun still needed to keep a low profile. Yan Jun pushed Yan Kuei away with a casual shove. Yan Kuei staggered and took a few steps back. He looked at Yan Jun as if Yan Jun had become a stranger. He felt that the Yan Jun in front of him seemed to be completely different from before. Something isn't right. Why are you so strong? You have a cultivation technique? And you've begun cultivating? Yan Kuei seemed to have thought of something all of a sudden. His father was a titled diva, so he knew a little about the situation. Yan Jun was a very special entity in the ancestral land of the Yan clan, and even a taboo. No one would impart cultivation techniques to him. But now, Yan Jun had just started cultivating, and he was actually even more powerful than Yan Kuei. Without anyone to impart skills to him, there was only one possibility. He was learning in secret. At this thought, Yan Kuei immediately yelled, Yan Jun, you actually dared to learn cultivation techniques in secret. Capture him and hand him over to the law enforcement elder. Yan Kuei was very excited. He had long disliked Yan Jun. Yanlan was always inseparable from Yan Jun. What was Yan Jun worth? He was just a little bastard. But now, Yan Jun was actually cultivating. This made Yan Kuei feel that he had seized an opportunity. Hence, the few people behind Yan Kuei attacked. They were all juniors of the Yan clan's ancestral land. None of them were divas, but they had cultivated since they were young, and could be considered to have cultivated for a long time. All of them attacked mercilessly, trying to capture Yan Jun. However, Yan Jun was only using one of the bloodlines in his body. It was the Yan clan's bloodline, which he was most confident in using. This was the progenitor's bloodline, and it was infinite. He had almost cultivated it to the extreme. The next step was to prepare to break through to the realm of divas. Bang, bang, bang. Yan Jun's attacks were ruthless. Like a phantom, he defeated Yan Kuei's 3 companions in the blink of an eye. Moreover, all of them were lying on the ground and wailing. Yan Jun approached Yan Kuei step by step, causing Yan Kuei's face to turn pale. He said in a trembling voice, "What are you trying to do? Yan Jun, don't do anything rash. My father is a titled diva." Bang. Before he could finish speaking, Yan Kuei cried out in pain and received a punch to the face. Yan Jun kicked Yan Kuei in the stomach, breaking a few ribs and venting all his resentment in the past. This time, if not for Yan Kuei's identity, he would even want to kill Yan Kuei. Even despite Yan Jun's reservations, Yan Kuei was still beaten into a pulp. Although he was not dead, he would have to recuperate for a few months. With the regenerative ability of the Yan clan's bloodline, his injuries could already be considered relatively severe. Having taken proper revenge for his grievances, Yan Jun felt incomparably elated. It was as if even the 4 bloodlines in his body were about to undergo metamorphosis uncontrollably. Hence, Yan Jun quickly left and rushed towards the back mountain. On the ground, Yan Kuei stared intently at Yan Jun's departing figure. His eyes filled with venomous resentment. Go! Go back and tell father. We must capture this little bastard. I want revenge. Hard revenge. With the help of a few companions, Yan Kuei quickly rushed home and told his father, a titled diva, about this matter. Huh? Yan Jun has begun cultivating. Yan Kuei's father was a titled diva. He knew very well that no one in the ancestral land would impart Yan Jun cultivation techniques under the unspoken rule. However, looking at his son's swollen face, which was covered in injuries, he was very certain that Yan Jun must have cultivated. No matter how incapable his son was, he had cultivated since he was young. How could he not even be able to defeat a mere Yan Jun who had not cultivated? He must have cultivated, but if no one imparted skills to him, it meant that he was learning in secret. Yen-san, capture Yan Jun for interrogation. We must find out how he obtained the cultivation technique. Yan Kuei's father waved his hand and sent a diva under his command to capture Yan Jun. Whether Yan Jun had cultivated or not, a true diva would definitely be able to capture him with ease. Father, after capturing Yan Jun, we must torture him extensively to avenge me. Yan Kuei said with a sinister expression. Idiot, Yan Jun's matter involves a lot of things. What do you know? You ignorant and incompetent thing. Go back and reflect in confinement for 100 years. Don't come out until you become a diva. Yan Kuei's father rebuked Yan Kuei. Yan Kuei was made to give up and obediently accept his punishment of reflecting in confinement. Yan Jun arrived at the back mountain, but realized that his master had yet to arrive. Hence, he simply sat cross-legged on the ground and began to recollect the feeling of beating Yan Kuei up just now. He vaguely felt that the bloodline in his body seemed to be beginning to boil. It was not one bloodline, but 4 bloodlines. This was clearly a sign of imminent breakthrough. I'm finally about to break through. Yan Jun was very excited. He knew the significance of breaking through very well. If one did not become a diva, they would ultimately be an ant. In the progenitor world, if one wanted to accomplish something, they had to be a diva. Some people were born divas or even titled divas. They had infinite resources, whereas some people lived at the bottom and had to struggle step by step. Yan Jun felt very lucky. Even though he had struggled at the bottom for a long time, he was lucky enough to meet his master, who allowed him to begin his path of cultivation. Moreover, his cultivation speed was so fast. In just a few months, he had actually reached the critical point of breaking through. It had to be known that even some people who did not lack resources and were rather talented would need decades or centuries to break through and become divas. His speed could be considered terrifying. It was just that when cultivating, Yan Jun felt like he had fallen into an illusion, and as if a long time had passed in the illusion, which made Yan Jun slightly uncomfortable. Apart from that, he felt that his mysterious master was almost perfect, omniscient, and omnipotent. Found you, Yan Jun. So you're here. Just as Yan Jun was fantasizing about the various benefits after becoming a diva, an unfamiliar voice entered his ears. Swoosh. Yan Jun opened his eyes. He saw an acquaintance. Diva Yen-san? Yan Jun's heart skipped a beat. He had seen the person in front of him before. He was a famous diva under the command of Yan Kuei's father. He quickly thought of Yan Kuei. He did not expect Yen-san to come as soon as he beat Yan Kuei up. You're here to capture me? Are you here under the order of the law enforcement elder? Heh, Yan Jun. Why do I need the elder's order to capture you? Who do you think you are? You're just a little bastard. You injured young Master Kuei. So you should understand that you have to bear the consequences. However, Yan Jun slowly stood up and entered a fighting pose. You're still trying to resist? Looks like you've really secretly learned cultivation techniques. You've improved quite a bit. But so what? I'm a diva. All who are below divas are insignificant. Boom. Yen-san unleashed his diva's true form. It was still the bloodline of the Yen clan. The terrifying pressure of a diva enveloped Yan Jun, making it difficult for him to move, and putting him under immense pressure. Whether one was a diva or not made a really huge difference. It was even despairing. Yan Jun raised his head with difficulty. The 4 progenitors' bloodlines in his body surged wildly. At this moment, he did not expect his master to arrive. Moreover, his master had asked him to keep it a secret. At this moment, he could only rely on himself. Divas are not invincible. Break! In the next moment, Yanjun unleashed the Yen clan's bloodline in his body, which was already at the critical point. If one was not a diva, they would not be able to manifest the diva's true form by unleashing their bloodline, and would not be able to attain powerful combat power. Divas were strong because of their true forms. At this moment, the bloodline of the Yen clan in Yanjun's body erupted, actually forming a rich bloody color that enveloped the sky. It was like a huge fire dragon, resisting the pressure from Yen San wildly. Ha! Yen San was a little surprised. The number of people who could resist his pressure just by relying on the eruption of their bloodline, and who were not divas at that, could be counted on one hand. Moreover, he could also tell that Yanjun's Yen clan bloodline had also reached the critical point of breaking through. Once he broke through, he would become a diva. I didn't expect you to reach such a state unknowingly by secretly learning cultivation techniques. No, even if you secretly learn cultivation techniques without resources, how can you reach the critical point? Tell me, who exactly is the person behind you? Yen San's gaze turned sharp. If Yanjun was only cultivating alone in secret, it would not be a big deal. At most, Yanjun would be the only one. However, if there was someone behind Yanjun, things would be different. It might very well involve a game between some mighty figures. In the ancestral land of the Yen clan, not all were united. There were countless open and covert conflicts between them. However, Yen San was a member of the Elder Council, and Yen Kuei's father was also a member of the Elder Council. They had to find the mysterious diva behind Yanjun. There's no one behind me. Heh! You can't defeat me? So you want to frame me? Humph, you're not even a diva. Why would I need to frame you? Forget it, it doesn't matter if you don't tell me. After capturing you, you'll have to spit out everything. Yen San's gaze turned cold. Then, his diva's true form transformed into a huge palm that grabbed forcefully at Yanjun. The power of the diva's true form was too strong. Yanjun was under immense pressure. At this moment, he did not dare to hold back anymore. He roared. Bloodlines of Kuan, Mang, Join and the Yen clan, break. Bloodlines erupted from Yanjun's body in an instant. The origin of every bloodline was extraordinary. They were all the bloodlines of progenitors. The 4 strongest bloodlines in the entire small kiliocosm were all gathered in one body, and all of them had been cultivated to the critical point. Boom! The 4 bloodlines complemented each other. Vaguely, for terrifying roars echoed in the void, and they actually firmly resisted a strike from Yen San's true form. This was simply incredible. Without relying on any treasures or secret techniques, just the eruption of his bloodlines could actually withstand the attack of a diva's true form. This was simply too rare. Yen San's eyes widened, and his breathing quickened. His face was filled with disbelief. All 4 progenitors' bloodlines are on the verge of a breakthrough. This is impossible. How long will this take? How massive would the resources consumed be? Even if it's a title diva or a supreme diva behind you, they can't be capable of such. If Yen San had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. He was a diva who knew Yen Jun's identity. This was a true bastard, who actually possessed 4 progenitors' bloodlines. It seemed very extraordinary, but in reality, having too many bloodlines was completely useless. Those ordinary living beings also had too many different bloodlines in their bodies. After all, ordinary life forms were the descendants of various divas. It was not surprising for some ordinary life forms to have tens of thousands of bloodlines. However, someone with 4 progenitors' bloodlines was very rare. In particular, it was even rarer to be able to cultivate all 4 bloodlines to the point of almost breaking through to the level of a diva. Yen San made up his mind and did not hold back anymore. His diva's true form instantly unleashed his full strength. Boom! It was as if even the mountain was about to collapse. In the next moment, the power of the diva's true form became 10 times stronger, putting Yanjun under unimaginable pressure. Even his 4 progenitors' bloodlines could no longer hold out. After all, that was a diva, a true diva. Breakthrough. I need to break through. I need to become a diva. Yanjun roared wildly in his heart. He mobilized all the power in his body, and his will was incomparably firm. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to break through. Buzz. The next moment, Yanjun vaguely sensed that the Yen clan's bloodline had been triggered by something. Immediately after, the same happened to the other 3 progenitors' bloodlines. They all cracked open. At the same time, a powerful feeling arose spontaneously. 4 phantoms suddenly appeared behind him. These 4 phantoms seemed infinitely majestic and possessed infinite power as they floated behind Yanjun. Seeing this scene, Yen San's entire body trembled as if he had suffered a heavy blow. A diva. That was a true diva. In fact, a diva with the foundation of the 4 progenitors' bloodlines was simply terrifying to the extreme. Even though they were only phantoms, they emitted a terrifying aura, and were completely above Yen San in power. Swoosh. The next moment, Yanjun opened his eyes. Yanjun opened his eyes. Divine light flashed in his eyes, making even Yen San afraid to look at him directly. Just by looking straight at him, the aura on Yanjun's body had surpassed Yen San in one fell swoop. It had to be known that although Yen San could not be considered a peak diva, he was still a senior diva who had defeated many other divas. Moreover, divas with the progenitor's bloodline were much stronger than divas with other bloodlines to begin with. The 4 progenitors' bloodlines all broke through to become divas at the same time. Incredible, truly incredible. However, Yen San was not too surprised. He only found it unbelievable. He knew that once Yanjun broke through, he would reach a terrifying level. The reason was very simple. Yanjun had the bloodline of the 4 progenitors. In the progenitor chiliocosm, there were 4 progenitors. They were progenitor Yen, progenitor Kuan, progenitor Mang, and progenitor Jiuyin. These 4 progenitors had also passed down their bloodlines, called the progenitors' bloodlines. The 4 progenitors' bloodlines all had different abilities, but they were all stronger than all the other bloodlines. It was already incredible that Yanjun possessed 4 progenitors' bloodlines. However, cultivating each progenitor's bloodline was 100 or 1,000 times harder than cultivating other bloodlines. As for cultivating 4 progenitors' bloodlines at the same time, the difficulty would increase to an unimaginable level. Who would have thought that Yanjun could cultivate all 4 progenitors' bloodlines to the level of divas? But now, as the 4 progenitors' bloodlines broke through one after another, Yanjun also sensed some differences. The phantoms of the diva's true form behind him actually showed signs of fusing, gradually overlapping to form one huge phantom. Break! The diva's true form of Yanjun had not even condensed, and there was only a phantom. He had just broken through, and his diva's true form also needed time to condense. Even so, just a phantom actually erupted with the power of a peak diva, striking Yen San majestically and forcefully. Thump! Yen San was a senior diva after all, and he had the bloodline of the Yen clan. He even had a diva's true form. Yet Yen San could not withstand Yanjun's strike. The powerful force pierced through Yen San's true form. If not for the fact that Yanjun had never thought of killing him, Yen San would probably be dead. You! Yen San was sweating profusely. In that instant just now, it felt as if he was facing death, and he had almost fallen. There was great terror in life-or-death situations. Now, looking at Yanjun, he actually felt fear. However, Yanjun looked at Yen San coldly and said, "I'm a diva now. According to the rules of the Yen clan's ancestral land, I can become an official member of the Yen clan's ancestral land. Yen San, get lost." Indeed, Yanjun knew the rules of the Yen clan's ancestral land very well. He was not an outsider, but had lived in the Yen clan's ancestral land since he was young, and knew the rules of the ancestral land by heart. These descendants of the Yen clan who had yet to become divas could not actually be considered official clansmen of the Yen clan. They could at most be considered reserve clansmen. Only by becoming true divas could they be considered official clansmen of the Yen clan. Compared to some foreign descendants of the Yen clan's bloodline, they were already much better. Yen Kuei dared to bully Yen Jun because apart from the fact that Yen Jun was weak and disliked, neither of them were official members of the Yen clan. The Yen clan would not pay attention to them at all. However, once he became an official clansman, things would be different. Yen San looked deeply at Yen Jun. He knew very well what it meant for Yen Jun to become a diva. Swoosh! Yen San had disappeared. He had to hurry back and report to title diva Yen Ting. As Yen San disappeared, Yen Jun closed his eyes again. He had just broken through and had only completed the metamorphosis of his bloodlines, but that was only the beginning. After the breakthrough in his bloodlines, there was still the most critical step, condensing the diva's true form. Only by condensing the diva's true form could one be considered a true diva and possess the power of a diva. Clearly, Yen Jun would still need to take some time. Hence, he sat cross-legged on the back peak and began condensing the diva's true form. However, Yen Jun did not know how terrifying the commotion he caused when condensing the diva's true form was. If it was just the Yen clan's bloodline that broke through to the level of divas, condensing the true form would not be a big deal. Instead, he had broken through to the diva level with 4 progenitors' bloodlines. When he condensed the diva's true form, it was equivalent to gradually combining the diva's true forms of 4 progenitors' bloodlines into one. That commotion was not small. It spread almost throughout the entire ancestral land of the Yen clan. What's going on? Who broke through and became a diva? Which junior broke through? He should be condensing the diva's true form now, but how can condensing the diva's true form cause such a huge commotion? Could it be that the bloodline is too pure? Once they become a diva, their bloodline will become even purer, but it's impossible for it to cause such a huge commotion. No, I even sensed the aura of other bloodlines. It's not just the bloodline of the Yen clan. Could it be that there are other bloodlines which have broken through to the diva level? Cultivating 2 bloodlines together. No, I have to take a look. I think it's in the direction of the back mountain. Let's see which family's disciple it is. Yen Jun had no idea how much commotion he had caused. Abnormal phenomena appeared, and all kinds of laws manifested. They were dense and condensed, enveloping the sky above the back mountain. At this moment, countless divas in the Yen clan's ancestral land had been alerted, and were rushing towards the back mountain. As for Lin Feng, he had actually been at the back mountain for a long time. Even when Yen San attacked, he was always at the side. He also wanted to see how Yen Jun, the protagonist of Providence, would survive the crisis of Yen San. Unexpectedly, Yen Jun was indeed worthy of being the protagonist of Providence. Not only did he defeat Yen San, he even broke through and became a diva. However, he lacked experience and caused such a huge commotion. In fact, he had actually let Yen San off, which meant endless potential trouble. However, Lin Feng still did not attack. He wanted to see how Yen Jun, the protagonist of Providence, could get out of this vortex. Thud. Yen Ting crushed the cup in his hand. The aura on his body flashed, making Yen San feel as if he was about to suffocate. You said that bastard Yen Jun actually broke through to become a diva? Moreover, he broke through in all 4 progenitors' bloodlines. That's right. I saw it with my own eyes. Even I was not his match. He almost killed me. Yen Ting's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew that there was something amiss behind Yen Jun. He had seen Yen Jun only a few months ago, and was certain that Yen Jun had not cultivated at that time. But now, after only a few months had passed, Yen Jun had already broken through to become a diva. Moreover, he had broken through for all 4 progenitors' bloodlines in his body. Was this possible? It won't do. If this little bastard finds out about what happened back then, it'll be troublesome. I absolutely can't allow him to make it. At most, I'll attack personally. You wish to attack personally? Yen Jun has already become a diva. He might become an official member of the Yen clan. He still wants to become an official clansman? He can forget about it. Even if he breaks through and becomes a divas, and some elders appreciate his talent, that will still take time. Moreover, Yen Jun has yet to undergo some rituals, and is not an official clansman of the Yen clan yet. I won't give him the chance to become an official clansman. If I kill him, at most I'll just receive some punishment. I can still afford it. At this thought, Yan Ting no longer hesitated. He immediately led Yen San towards the back mountain. At the back of the mountain, Yen Jun was working hard to condense the diva's true form. However, he had just broken through in the 4 progenitors' bloodlines and could not condense the diva's true form in a short period of time. At this moment, some divas had already arrived at the back mountain. They naturally recognized Yen Jun at a glance. It's Yen Jun. How can it be Yen Jun? Back then, the elders decided to leave Yen Jun to fend for himself, and forbade anyone to impart Yen Jun cultivation techniques. What's going on now? Yen Jun has actually become a diva? Something's wrong. It's impossible for Yen Jun to become a diva through cultivating himself, even if he obtained a cultivation technique. After all, that requires a huge amount of resources. Yen Jun isn't just cultivating the Yen clan's bloodline, but the bloodlines of 4 progenitors. It's incredible. He actually cultivated 4 progenitors' bloodlines, but all 4 progenitors' bloodlines have broken through to the level of divas. How massive must the amount of resources required be? Yen Jun is ultimately a taboo in the ancestral land. The elders probably won't let it go so easily. Just as these people were discussing, 2 figures flew over from afar and descended directly to the back peak. Yen Jun, it's really you, you little bastard. You cultivated in secret. Do you want to take revenge on the Yen clan? As soon as Yen Ting revealed himself, he immediately berated loudly. His rumbling voice echoed in the back mountain like thunder. Even Yen Jun, who was immersed in condensing the diva's true form, frowned. He had had no choice but to pause in condensing the diva's true form. He knew that Yen Ting was deliberately delaying him from condensing the diva's true form. Yen Ting, your son humiliated me without restraint. I only taught him a little lesson, and you sent Yen San to capture me. Heh! Do you really think you can control everything in the ancestral land of the Yen clan? Yen Jun did not give in and sneered. A cold glint flashed across Yen Ting's eyes. He said coldly, Yen Jun, your status is low. The elders have already shown you mercy by allowing you to continue living in the ancestral land. However, instead of repaying them, you cultivated in secret and even injured a disciple of the Yen clan. You harbored malicious intent, and your crime is unforgivable. Today, I will personally capture you and hand you over to the elders to deal with. Yen Ting did not give Yen Jun a chance to refute at all and attacked directly. Actually, Yen Ting could tell at a glance that Yen Jun was at a critical moment. He could not let Yen Jun continue. How talented was someone who could cultivate 4 progenitors' bloodlines to the diva level? Even if he had a large amount of resources, he had cultivated to become a diva in just a few months. This speed was too fast. Even Yen Ting was terrified. Hence, he had no choice but to attack, and he used a killing move immediately. He had never thought of really capturing Yen Ting. Instead, he was going to take this opportunity to kill Yen Jun directly and eliminate him completely, leaving no hidden danger. Even if he would be punished by the elders for this, so what? He was a dignified titled diva, and his father was even one of the elders. How severe could the elders' punishment be over a dead little bastard? He could completely afford it. At this moment, Yen Ting made up his mind. Actually, many divas saw through Yen Ting's intention, but no one had any intention of stopping him. This was because Yen Jun's identity was very awkward, and he was even disliked by many Yen clansmen. The only reason he survived was that the elders of the Yen clan still had some pride. However, what was the point of surviving like this? He was not allowed to cultivate, and they were waiting for Yen Jun to die naturally. Who would have thought that something would suddenly change now? Hence, no one would object to Yen Ting killing Yen Jun. At least, no one would stop Yen Ting. Rumble. Yen Ting was a titled diva and a peak titled diva at that. He went all out the moment he attacked, absolutely not giving Yen Jun a chance to catch his breath. In particular, Yen Ting guessed that there must be a powerful diva behind Yen Jun. Not even a titled diva, but a supreme diva. If that supreme diva wanted to protect Yen Jun, it would be troublesome. He might as well take this opportunity to kill Yen Jun as quickly as possible now. and make it something already done. Even if the Supreme Diva really existed, it would be useless. Yen Ting, you want to kill me, but I'm no longer the same person as before. Yen Jun naturally sensed Yen Ting's killing intent. At this moment, he would not place his hopes on anyone. He could only rely on himself. Boom. Although only a portion of the diva's true form was condensed, the diva's true form condensed from 4 progenitors' bloodlines was still rather formidable. The 4 phantoms gradually fused and overlapped, forming one phantom. Moreover, as soon as this phantom appeared, a transcendent aura seemed to surround Yen Jun. Even those titled divas seemed to be vaguely suppressed. Terrifying. Is this the diva's true form condensed from the 4 progenitors' bloodlines? It can actually suppress our diva's true forms. Is this still an ordinary diva? Terrifying, truly terrifying. If Yen Jun is allowed to grow, he will probably become an anomaly. Isn't it a shame to kill such an anomaly just like that? He's ultimately a descendant of our Yen clan's bloodline. The diva's true form condensed from the fusion of 4 progenitors' bloodlines was simply incredible. Seeing that Yen Jun actually had such potential, some divas already had faint thoughts of appreciation for his talent. This was also why Yen Ting insisted on killing Yen Jun. Some ordinary divas might appreciate talent, but would some peak-titled divas appreciate talent? In fact, would the elders who made the decision back then appreciate talent? As long as one elder thought of appreciating his talent, it would be almost impossible to kill Yen Jun again. Yen Ting's speed was indeed fast, and he was nothing if not vicious. This time, he was going all out to kill Yen Jun. Bang. Yen Ting's attack landed on Yen Jun. Yen Jun's entire body suffered a heavy blow. Even though he had 4 types of progenitors' bloodlines, and had even condensed the diva's true form, he ultimately had not completely condensed it. Moreover, even if he had completely condensed it, Yen Ting was a peak entity among titled divas, and could still firmly suppress Yen Jun. Hence, the strike severely injured Yen Jun, causing a portion of the diva's true form that Yen Jun had just condensed to collapse instantly. At the same time, with a sinister expression, Yen Ting continued to blast towards Yen Jun with terrifying power, intending to eliminate him. Yen Jun, you little bastard. Back when your father betrayed the Yen clan, the elders should have executed you. Unfortunately, the elders couldn't put their pride aside. But today you actually dare to cultivate. You're courting death. I'm not afraid to tell you that I was the one who captured your father back then, and he was eventually executed by the elders. Haha, your mother also committed suicide. Now, I'll send you to reunite with your parents. Victory was already in Yen Ting's grasp. In the next moment, he would crush Yen Jun into dust. Yen Jun clenched his fists tightly. His expression twisted as he roared in a low voice. He had learned the truth. It turned out that Yen Ting was the culprit behind his parents' deaths. Unfortunately, he could no longer avenge his parents. Who dares to hurt my disciple? Suddenly, a cold voice echoed in the back mountain. At the same time, a vast and boundless aura surged and erupted instantly. Just the aura made everyone feel as if they were about to suffocate. Yen Ting's fatal strike was right in front of Yen Jun, inches away, but it stopped dead under the eruption of this aura. Even though he unleashed his power in a frenzy and used all his strength, he could not advance another inch. You! Yen Ting looked up and saw the figure who attacked. Then his entire body shook, as if in disbelief, but also as if it was only natural. For a moment, he actually could not say anything. On the other hand, when Yen Jun saw this figure, his eyes turned red as he hurriedly shouted, "Master!" Lin Feng looked at Yen Jun and nodded. "You're very good. You didn't reveal my identity." Indeed, back then, Lin Feng had warned Yen Jun not to reveal Lin Feng's identity at any time. Although Yen Jun did not know Lin Feng's identity, he knew Lin Feng's appearance. With a little description, who would not know? However, even when he was about to die, Yen Jun did not reveal anything. This satisfied Lin Feng, who was hiding in the dark. So, when he saw that Yen Jun could not hold out, Lin Feng simply came out. "Greetings, Elder Yen Yun." When Yen Ting saw Lin Feng, he had no choice but to lower his head. Yan Yun was one of the strongest elders and held the highest authority in the ancestral land. How could a mere titled diva like him compare to Yan Yun? Hence, even someone as arrogant as Yen Ting had to bow down. Elder? Master is an elder of the ancestral land. Only then did Yen Jun seem to realize that his master's identity was special. Actually, on careful thought, he should have known. How could an ordinary diva train him to become a diva so quickly, and break through in 4 progenitors' bloodlines at the same time to become a diva at that? It had to be at least a supreme diva. And a supreme diva was very likely an elder of the ancestral land. It was just that Yen Jun had not deliberately inquired about Lin Feng's identity in the past. Otherwise, it would be very easy to find out. Yen Ting, you want to kill my disciple? Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. Even revealing a trace of the aura on his body made Yen Ting tremble in fear. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him, and it felt incomparably heavy. Yen Ting knew that there could be no reconciliation. He could only grit his teeth and say, Elder Yen Yun, you haven't been in the ancestral land for long, so you might not know the identity of this Yen Jun. His identity is special. The elders have all forbidden imparting cultivation techniques to him, but you took Yen Jun in as your disciple. By doing this, you've already violated the elders' resolution. Violated the elders' resolution? Yen Jun has the bloodline of the Yen clan. There can be no mistake to it. He's an authentic descendant of the Yen clan. In that case, so what if I impart cultivation techniques to him? If you're unconvinced, go find the elders. Find all the elders you know. If anyone is unconvinced, come find me. Lin Feng said domineeringly. Elder Yen Yun, you... Shut up. Lin Feng waved his hand, and a terrifying aura sent Yen Ting flying like a huge mountain. Even though Yen Ting was a titled diva, even a peak titled diva, he could not even withstand Lin Feng's aura. Even his diva's true form was severely damaged. If Lin Feng had not shown mercy, Yen Ting would have been crushed by this strike. Yen Jun, I won't kill Yen Ting today, because I am leaving him for you. He's your enemy. You have to kill your enemy yourself. Lin Feng stood with his hands behind his back and said to Yen Jun. Yen Jun's entire body shook. Then, his gaze turned sharp as he replied in a low voice, Master, don't worry. I will definitely avenge myself. Hearing Lin Feng and Yen Jun's conversation, Yen Ting's entire body shook, as if he had been struck by lightning. He was not dead, actually, only thanks to Yen Jun. Yen Ting was clearly intended to be a stepping stone to train Yen Jun. I refuse to accept this. Elder Yen Yun, you act without restraint. You are not fit to take on the responsibility of an elder. Yen Ting shouted. Whether I can take on the responsibility of an elder is not for you to worry. Huh? They came fast enough. Lin Feng lifted his head and looked into the distance. A figure quickly flew over from there. The aura on his body far exceeded that of a titled diva. Elder. It's Elder Yen Ji. Elder Yen Ji? Isn't that Diva Yen Tin's father? I'm afraid things will get troublesome now. There'll probably be another turmoil in the ancestral land when the two elders fight. Hey, you're probably not familiar with this Elder Yen Yun, right? Do you know how he became an elder of the ancestral land back then? I really don't know. I'm often in seclusion and didn't pay attention. Elder Yen Yun only became an elder of the ancestral land after challenging 3 elders in a row and winning. Even if Elder Yen Ji is a veteran supreme diva, how can he be Elder Yen Yun's match? Many divas were discussing spiritedly. Most of them knew Elder Yen Ji, but they were very unfamiliar with Lin Feng. Yen Yun. Elder Yen Ji's voice was booming and thunderous. It sounded before he arrived. Elder Yen Ji, you're quite fast. Don't worry, Yen Ting isn't dead. I only dealt him a minor punishment. Of course, Lin Feng knew about the relationship between Yen Ting and Elder Yen Ji. Elder Yen Ji glanced at Yen Ting and knew that Yen Ting had been severely injured. There was no knowing how long it would take for him to recover. Then, he glanced at Yen Jun beside Lin Feng, and his expression immediately darkened. He said sternly, Yen Yun, you've just entered the ancestral land. How dare you act so recklessly? You actually imparted Yen Jun cultivation techniques in secret. Do you know that Yen Jun's identity is special? The elders unanimously decided that he cannot be imparted with any cultivation techniques. How dare you go against the elders' resolution? Oh? Can't I impart Yen Jun cultivation techniques? I'm sorry, I only learned of it now, but it's too late. Lin Feng had a nonchalant expression, as if he paid no heed to Elder Yen Ji's words at all. Master, I implicated you. Yen Jun bit his lip and said in a low voice. However, Lin Feng shook his head, not caring at all. What was a mere Elder Yen Ji worth? He believed that everyone in the ancestral land saw the situation very clearly. Apart from that mysterious Grand Elder, who would dare to fight him? In this world, all rules were set by the strong. Why would he care about the Elder's decision? Elder Yen Ji, I already accepted my disciple. It was just an accident. Why? Do you still want to fight me? Lin Feng gradually emitted his aura. Even Elder Yen Ji's expression changed drastically, as if he had thought of something. For a moment, his face was flushed, but he did not say anything. How boring. When Grand Elder exits seclusion, I'll look for him again. Lin Feng shook his head, then waved his hand and left publicly with Yen Jun. In the end, he left a sentence that echoed in the void. From now on, Yen Jun is my disciple. If you challenge him openly, I can agree to it. If anyone wants to play any tricks, I won't show mercy. His loud voice echoed in the void. This was clearly a warning or threat to Yen Ji and his son. However, Elder Yen Ji did not dare to retort. This domineering announcement stunned everyone. It was as if these divas of the ancestral land only realized today how tyrannical this Elder Yen Yun, who had just joined the ancestral land, was. Even Elder Yen Ji, who was also an elder, did not seem to dare to challenge him. Master, will I cause you trouble? Lin Feng brought Yen Jun back to his mountain, but along the way, Yen Jun appeared very silent. Since he was young, anyone who was his friend would be implicated by him in the end. Even though his master seemed to be very strong now, and was an elder, Yen Jun's identity was special. Even the Grand Elder was furious back then. How could things be so easy after Master publicly went against the other elders for him now? Hence, deep down, Yen Jun was actually very worried. Lin Feng stopped. He looked at Yen Jun and shook his head slightly. It's indeed a little troublesome. However, it's not what you think. Do you think those elders can do anything to me? Back then, it was because I defeated 3 elders of the Yen clan in a row that I could enter the ancestral land of the Yen clan and become an elder of the Yen clan. Why didn't Elder Yen Ji dare to attack? It's because he's afraid. He's afraid of being defeated by me. Strength. Remember, strength is the most important thing. The so-called elders are just useless weaklings. The Grand Elder is the only one that I can take slightly seriously. But that's all. In the ancestral land of the Yen clan, you do not have to fear anyone. I really don't care about anyone below the progenitors. Lin Feng said it very casually, but in reality, Yen Jun was not that confident. He only felt that Lin Feng seemed to be fearless, unrestrained, carefree, and confident. Even in the ancestral land of the Yen clan, he was unparalleled and could do whatever he wanted. He was different from all the diva he had seen in the past. Even those high and mighty elders in the ancestral land, as supreme divas, were still restrained by the rules. They had to abide by the rules when doing things and could not transgress them. Lin Feng was different. There were no signs of being fettered by rules on him at all. It was as if nothing could restrain Lin Feng. Only at this moment did Yen Jun realize that his master was indeed an extraordinary entity. Even the Grand Elder of the ancestral land was probably inferior to his master. The 4 progenitors' bloodlines in your body have all broken through to the level of the diva. Now that you've condensed the diva's true form, you need to fuse them into one. I'll help you. With that, Lin Feng began to help Yen Jun condense the diva's true form. He had a large amount of energy and time acceleration. Hence, in just a few days, he helped Yen Jun stabilize his realm and condense the diva's true form, and even improve further. The providence has become richer again. Perhaps it won't be long before he can enter the realm of a titled diva, or even a supreme diva. At that time, the cataclysmic power he's carrying will erupt. Lin Feng looked at Yan Jun, who was cultivating. He realized that the providence on Yan Jun's body had become stronger. At the same time, the cataclysmic power had also become stronger. Perhaps Yan Jun was about to cause a series of events that concerned the fate of the entire small kiliocosm. This was the fate of the protagonist of Providence. Without strength, no matter how much providence there is, it's useless. Lin Feng shook his head. He did not believe in fate. As a dignified kiliocosm sovereign, he was supreme. He was the master of his own fate. Lin Feng actually did not need to do much now. He just needed to protect Yan Jun and allow him to slowly grow. Then, he would quietly wait for Yan Jun to trigger the cataclysm of the small kiliocosm. This would still take some time. Fools! Elder Yan Ji looked at Yan Ting coldly, even though he knew that Yan Ting was not at fault in this matter, and was even rather decisive. After learning that Yan Jun had become a diva, he even attacked him personally immediately, prepared to eliminate him at all costs. However, the outcome was not what they had hoped for. It even went rather poorly, causing Elder Yan Ji to embarrass himself. Father, are we supposed to stop here? I can also tell that Yan Jun is very forbearing, and definitely vengeful for every slight made against him, let alone for such a huge feud. If he becomes a supreme diva one day, the consequences will be unthinkable. Yan Ting could not help but feel a little worried. In the past, he would never have been worried. Even if Yan Jun became a diva, he would not be worried. After all, it was not so easy to become a supreme diva. Look at the ancestral land of the Yen clan. How many with the Yen clan's bloodline were there? How many astonishingly talented divas were there? And how many of them had become supreme divas? However, when he learned that the Yan Yun was the person behind Yan Jun, Yan Ting felt that things were really bad. With such a powerful supreme diva supporting Yan Jun could be expected to improve rapidly. It was not impossible to cultivate to the level of a supreme diva. Elder Yan Ji's face was taut with anger. He glanced at his son, Diva Yan Ting, and said with a dark expression, "Idiot, do you know who that Yan Yun is?" "Humph, forget about me. Even if a few more supreme elders came, they would definitely not be his match. Perhaps only the Grand Elder can fight Yan Yun. I didn't expect Yan Jun to actually catch Yan Yun's eye. This is really troublesome." "What? That Elder Yan Yun is so powerful? Father, is there really no other way?" Yan Ting was shocked. Although he was the son of Elder Yan Ji, and knew that Yan Yun was an elder of the ancestral land, only those supreme elders knew how strong he was. Even Yan Ting was not qualified to know. It's not that there's no way. That Yan Jun isn't an official member of the Yan clan yet, so there's a trace of hope. Yes, this matter is no longer something we can interfere in. I'll report to the Grand Elder now. Only by asking the Grand Elder to step in might there be a trace of hope. Hence, Elder Yan Ji made up his mind and immediately set off towards the residence of the Grand Elder. Soon, Elder Yan Ji arrived at the residence of the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder cultivated in seclusion all year round. He actually could no longer advance. Cultivating in seclusion was done more out of resignation. This was because matters in the outside world no longer interested the Grand Elder. Perhaps he was only interested in becoming a progenitor. However, how difficult was it to become the fifth progenitor? The Grand Elder had cultivated for countless years, but he had seen no signs at all. He could not find a way at all. "Grand Elder, please do us justice." Elder Yan Ji began to cry to the Grand Elder and explained the situation. Yan Yun took Yan Jun in as his disciple? That's right, Grand Elder. Moreover, Yan Yun is very arrogant. Only if Grand Elder takes action can Yan Yun perhaps be taken down a notch. Elder Yan Ji was filled with confidence in the Grand Elder. This person could be considered invincible even among supreme divas. Apart from the progenitors, he would almost never lose. The Grand Elder closed his eyes. After a long while, he spoke slowly and heaved a long sigh. "Yan Ji, you're being too obsessive. What happened back then was not our fault. You also know the relationship between the 4 progenitors. We're just pawns. So what if Yanjun finds out the truth? He can't even be considered a pawn. Yun is different. He has already entered the sight of the progenitor. The progenitor once said clearly that he can't see through the Yun. What? Even the great progenitor can't see through Yun? How is this possible? Nothing is impossible. Everyone has some secrets. Perhaps Yun also has secrets. Since he accepted Yanjun as his disciple, then let it be. Regardless of his future achievements, he will still be a member of the Yen clan. That's enough. But, no buts, Elder Yenji. You've been too engrossed in some mundane matters in the clan over the years, and too obsessed with authority. What is authority? Has Yun ever paid attention to the authority you have? You do not understand. Only true strength is authority. With that, the Grand Elder did not say anything else and closed his eyes. Only Elder Yenji was left with a thoughtful expression.